Shalom.
Shalom, Rabbi Dov Ber Cohen.
Shalom, Holy Rabbi Ziskin.
You're looking very good. It's the air in Yerushalayim, I think, huh?
Really is. I don't know where to look.
Very excited about this. People are having to come to a waiting room, so I'm letting them in as they come, as long as they recognize who they are.
Okay.
People are still coming, so we'll give it a few minutes.
Yeah.
Hello, Ben Diner, Benji, Daniela. They're coming. Galia, Justin, Gidon.
There are lots of Ziskins on this call.
I know, huh? And I think they must think I'm teaching tonight. You've got a big fan club. What can I tell you?
Yay, Johnny's on. Johnny's on.
Okay, we're getting there. Ooh. That's the wrong kind of mask, Rabbi.
No, in Israel, that's where we do it. We do.
And that's why it's spreading, huh? That's actually very cool. Now you can put a regular mask over that, and I think you get a lot of attention.
That is very cool. I'm trying not to get it.
Got it. Okay, another Ziskin. Yessi. Okay. All right, so we'll give it maybe another minute or two, because I do think that a lot of people are going to come on just...
Yeah, people come fashionably late.
Yeah, nobody wants to walk into a party too soon, you know?
Because when you walk into a party a bit late, then your eyes can meet across the Zoom.
Tell me, how many times have you used that one?
Only once before, actually. Our eyes met across a crowded Zoom.
I love it. Oh, great. Rabbi, I just want you to know, you've got a really, really nice group of people here.
Oh, really?
It's a very diverse group, but what they all have in common is that they're into growing, and they take their growth seriously, and they want to have a good time at the same time. So I promised them that you're a jack of all trades, including having a blast growing. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I like that. But it also takes serious work. Got to be prepared.
Okay, so I always tell people.
It's not all fun and games, you know.
I tell people, like a guy in the gym, if you enjoy the gym, you're going to do better. If you don't enjoy the effort in the gym, you're not going to do well. If you love gym, you'll love growth, and you'll do better.
Right.
But certainly when you're gymming with somebody who has a good sense of humor, it's even better. So that's what we're talking about over here. Okay, so I think we should get started. I'm going to just welcome you officially on behalf of Age 20s in South Africa, and just let everybody know how excited we really are to have you part of this. We've been trying to get Rabbi Cohen to move to South Africa for a long time. His wife is South African. We thought we had a bit of a leverage pin, but in the meantime, we'll take Zoom. So we're very excited. It's a 4-part webinar that we're doing. We hope it's the beginning of many great endeavors together. The topic tonight is accessing or unharnessing. What'd you call it exactly, Rabbi?
I think I called it, let's face it, you just want to be happy.
Yeah, that was the off-Broadway title.
Yeah.
Accessing inner joy. And we're looking forward to it. Rabbi Cohen is not just going to give over some ideas, but he's also very practical. He takes this kind of stuff seriously. He's not into just teaching and having an audience. He wants people really to grow. And he uses the word transformation often because that's really what it's about. It's about real interchange, which really does require work, but there's no greater pleasure than that. So without further ado, Rabbi, we're so happy to have you over here. The best way we can get you. And they're all yours.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Ziskin. So as my holy mentor, Rabbi Ziskin said, we're not into inspiration here. although we are a little bit. We want you to be inspired, but inspiration wears off very, very quickly. And I don't know, some of you came on Justified trips to Thailand, and people have been on very inspirational trips. A 10-day trip to South Africa, to Israel, or a 10-day trip to Thailand. Very inspirational. And what inspiration means is you have a new view of life. I'm trying to look at the camera. Here it is. You have a new view of life and yourself and your dreams and your visions, and you have a spark of newness and a vision, and it's very exciting to you. And that's what inspiration is. But inspiration doesn't really last for particularly long. And I've noticed that most people, after an amazing trip, however amazing it was, they just go back to who they were before after about 2 weeks, because you got pressure from work, and you still got the same relationships, and you still got the same issues, and you still everything's kind of, nothing's really changed so much. So inspiration is very cute, it's not good enough. Even I had one of my friends, he went on a Tony Robbins personal development thing, and he did fire walking, which we've actually experienced together with H20s. I burnt the bottom of my feet, but that's a different story. But anyway, he did fire walking, and people on the first day of Tony Robbins do fire walking, and it's like, unleash the power within, you can awaken yourselves. And then 2 weeks later, they're just back to their same old habits and ways of being. So inspiration, cute, but it's not what we're about. That's why we said, we basically agreed, we didn't even have to say anything, that there's no point coming to do one class. You're going to come and do one class, is very inspirational, and then that's it. It's not going to work like that. So we said it has to be at least 4 classes that build on each other, and that there's got to be some work for you to do in between. You're going to have homework, and you're going to be accountable for doing the work, in order that you can take your inspiration and turn it into transformation. Now, transformation means I'm actually changing. I'm changing myself as a person. I'm actually growing in an authentic way. Not just, I hear a very good shia over here, and then I watched a TED talk, and that was very inspirational. And then I did a yoga class, and that was sweet. And it can't be like that. Real growth takes structure. You need structure and you need support. And so that's what we're going to be giving you, structure and support, so you can transform yourself. Now, the reason most people can't transform themselves is one of 2 reasons. Number one, they don't have the tools. They don't know how to do it. And the other one is they might have the tools, but they don't have the discipline. And this goes with everything in life. If you want to give up smoking, you have to know how to give up smoking. You have to know the actions you have to take and the thoughts you have to have, and you have to know how to do it. But even once you know how to do it, you then have to have the discipline and the motivation to actually get it done. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be giving you an understanding, and we're going to be giving you tools, and then we're going to be giving you a support network in order to help you actually accomplish these goals. And the subject we chose was simcha. So simcha is translated as joy. But we want to firstly understand really what that is. And we chose that topic because it is, if you say to anyone, and I've spoken to thousands and thousands of people, if you say to anyone, what do you really want? What do you really want in life? Basically 99% of people say, I want to be happy. I just want, it's this thing, it's like an almost elusive goal that everyone's striving for. Everyone wants it, but very, very, very few people experience deep happiness. And we got to work out why. Because the truth is that life is very simple, in a way. Our understanding life is very simple. All you need to do is you need to clarify the goal. What is it that I'm trying to achieve? And how can I define it? What does it mean to me? I want to have love. Can you define love? What is love? What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. What is love? So you got to know what your goal is. Number 2 step is you got to work out the steps you need to take in order to arrive at that goal. And number 3 step is you need to take those steps. That's it. That's for everything in your life. You want to get rid of your impatience. That's a good goal to have. I have lots of impatience. I want to get rid of my impatience. Now you've got to work out what are the things that are going to help me and what are the things that are going to stop me. And then you've got to do the things that are going to help you, and you've got to stop the things that aren't going to help you. That's it. Very simple. So that's what we want to do. We want to understand what is joy. If you want to experience joy, then we have to understand what is it. How do you define it? very first thing, define your term. Then we've got to work out what are the steps I need to take to experience joy. I'm going to use the word simcha from now on, because it doesn't only mean joy. We're going to define it now so you know what it is, but I'm going to be saying simcha. So we want to have simcha, we want to experience simcha, and we want to understand what are the steps I need to take to experience simcha, and what do I need to let go of and get rid of in order to experience simcha. Because there are some things blocking my simcha, and there are some things that I can do to get to it. So that's what we're going to be working on. And then we're going to have the discipline to do it. So how do you define simcha? How do you define joy? What is this elusive thing called joy? Now, Rav Noach Weinberg, who set up Aish Torah, he said a huge insight, and I only learned this a few months ago, that when defining an emotion, you can't actually define an emotion. What's the difference between love and gratitude? They're both positive feelings. So how do you define a feeling? Is a feeling. So how can you speak about a feeling? How can you really measure what's the difference between love and gratitude and wonder and happiness? So Rav Noach says a very important point. You can't really define an emotion. You can't say what it is, but how you understand what it is by working out what causes it. What causes it, that's going to tell you what it is. So we have an emotion called fear. How do you define fear? What does fear mean? Fear is caused by a threat to your ego. Any threat to your sense of self is you're going to arouse an emotion within you, and we call that emotion fear. So that could be public speaking. I have a fear of public speaking. That's an example. It's not one that I have at the moment. But people have a fear of public speaking. Why? Because if they make a mistake, then they'll look stupid, and that kills their ego. People have a fear of death. That's the ultimate fear, really, because death is the ultimate end of your ego. It's the ultimate end of your sense of self. So I actually did come face to face with a king cobra once. I lived in Thailand. I lived in Asia for 6 years, practicing Buddhism and martial arts and many different things. So I came face to face with a king cobra, and I felt fear, a lot of fear. Now, the truth is, in that situation, it's probably good and healthy to feel fear, because fear can save your life in that situation. So that was a relevant emotion. So I felt fear because there was a threat to my life. We have a fear of failure. We have many fears, and so we define fear as something that is a threat to your ego. What about worry? Worry or anxiety? What is worry? What is anxiety? You can't really describe it. You can say it's a feeling that I get, and my heart beats a lot, and my muscles tense up. So you have to say, well, what causes it? What causes it? And it's very similar to fear. The only difference between fear and worry or anxiety is fear is in the present moment. Worry and anxiety is the same thing, but projected into the future. So worry means there's a threat to my ego, but it's not immediate, it's in the future. So I'm going to fail my test, or bad things are going to happen in the future. So once we've projected this threat to our ego into the future, then that manifests as this feeling and emotion and experience, and we call that worry or anxiety. Love, what is love? So Rav Noach used to say, love is the feeling that you get when you focus on the virtues of another person. The feeling you get when I focus, my wife and I, by the way, this is not a relationships class, but I'm going to throw it in there, because we all have relationships. My wife and I each have a list of what we like about the other person. And we add to the list. And there is another different thing that you can do where you share the list with the other person, so that helps their sense of emotional intimacy and self-esteem. But this list is for ourselves. I focus all the time on the good things about my wife. Is my wife perfect? Yeah, actually. But let's say she wasn't perfect. I could still love her even though she's not perfect. Why? Because I choose to focus on the great things about her. Now, you can have someone who's got 20 good things and one bad thing. If you focus on the bad thing, you're not going to like them. You can have someone who has 20 bad things and one good thing, but you focus on the good thing and you're going to like them. And you're going to find when you have children, it's It's actually easier than when your husband or your wife. When you have children, you love them no matter what. So really, it's a different class, the love class, but there are two types of love. One is love based on focusing on the good, but there's also another level of intrinsic love. It's called Eino Teluya B'Davar. It doesn't depend on anything. I love my children, not because they're nice, and not because they're good, and not because they make me feel good, but because we have this intrinsic bond, intrinsic connection. And hopefully I love my wife for that reason too. So if all the virtues, if she lost them all and she stopped being an amazing yoga teacher and caring and kind and loving and a good cook and beautiful, I'd still love her because I have this intrinsic bond. So that there's two types of love. One is caused by being aware of the intrinsic connection that we have. And the other is by focusing on the good. So we get the idea now. We get the idea. You can understand. Maybe one more example, anger. Anger is the feeling I get when something doesn't go my way, when it goes against my ego again, by the way. You're going to notice ego comes up a lot here, and I'll define ego. But when something is against what I think it should be, then that causes anger. So now let's define simcha. Let's define joy. What is simcha? What makes you happy? So I want you all to now think, and you can sit up straight and you can breathe through your nose, and I just want you to think of a few things that make you feel happy. So I've got drugs, alcohol, and Netflix at the moment as my top three. That's not true. But let's say your top three are, let's say my football team wins. My football team won the South Africa won the Rugby World Cup against England. Mazel tov. My parents said South African and my wife's South African, so I get to enjoy whoever won that game, by the way. So fine. So South Africa wins the World Cup rugby. How does that make you feel? It makes you feel happy. You pass your exam and you become a lawyer. That makes you feel happy. It's nice weather. The weather's good, so now I'm feeling happy. You catch the bus, you're feeling happy. So there are many, many things that we say this thing happens, and then that causes an emotion, and that emotion is called happiness. And that's where we're so very wrong. And that's why we're not happy. Because if your happiness depends on something in the external world, that's not called simcha, for a start. It's not called simcha. If your happiness is dependent, if I say to you, is your brother happy? And you say, well, it really depends. If his team wins and it's sunny and everything's going his way, then he's happy. And if it doesn't, he's not so happy. I'm like, well, then that's not called simcha then. That's called he feels good when things go his way. So there's a feeling you get when things go your way. And you call that happiness. So what you do in your life is you chase things to go your way. And you're relying on them to go your way to be happy. And that's why most people aren't very happy. Because it's not very often that things go your way. So we've got the wrong equation, basically. You think that if I get A, I will be happy. So you spend your life chasing A. The truth is, A doesn't make you happy. B makes you happy. You've got to work out what B is, by the way. But A, that's why many people aren't happy, because you don't know what really, really, truly makes you happy. And in fact, A, not only does it not make you happy, it ruins your happiness. So one example of this is, I feel happy if I get all my desires met. Or if I get all my desires met, I feel happy. So that's very dependent and not consistent and superficial. Things go my way and very unstable, because your football team wins one week, but then they lose the next week. Or if you support Spurs, then you just lose every week. So very unstable, very inconsistent, not in your control at all. So you think that if I get all my desires met, I'll be happy. But Judaism teaches exactly the opposite. The only reason you're not happy is because you desire so many things. How about that? I'll say that again. What's going to make you happier in life? Getting the car you want and the job you want and the body you want and everything you want? Or not wanting those things so much because you have an internal state of happiness anyway, not dependent on those things. And those things are nice as well. But my happiness isn't dependent on the external world. Now, this is very, very, very deeply empowering, because it means you're completely in control if you're happy or not. And you stop blaming other people. You stop blaming your circumstances, and you stop relying on external circumstances going your way, because they don't often go your way. And the truth is that if you get what you want, it's never going to make you happy. Why? Because you're just going to want something else. Because you've got this thing in your head saying to you, how do I get happy? By getting what I want. So as soon as you get what you want, you then want something else, because how do you get happy? From getting what you want. So it's a never-ending cycle of just wanting, and if you don't get it, then you're not happy. And if you do get it, you're happy for a very short time. They've done research. If you get your dream car, you are happier, or you feel better for 10 days. That's it. 10 days. You have a little shift of mood for 10 days, and then you start thinking, oh, I wish I had got that car instead. And I hope no one scratches my car. And 10 days. And they did research, very important research to understand, people who won the lottery and people who got diagnosed with cancer. And they showed this result. I'll send you the article. When people who won the lottery, people have a baseline of happiness. This is basically how I feel. I'm happy. You win the lottery, that goes up. And they said it leveled back down to where you were basically after 2 weeks. 2 weeks, because you've still got your difficult relationship with your brother and your father and your sister. That doesn't go away because you won the lottery. And you've still got your football team who aren't doing very well. And you've still got your own negative character traits and your low self-esteem. And you've got all your stuff. So that wears off. People who got cancer, it was a shock. So their sense of happiness went down. But after about 2 weeks, it just leveled back out to their happiness level. So what we want to do is try to raise our happiness level and keep it to a consistent level. So now we got to work out what is the key to happiness? What creates simcha? What creates simcha? And then that is what we need to work on in order to be simcha. So there's number one definition is it doesn't depend on the external world. It doesn't depend on, that's very important for you to understand, and it's very empowering because it's completely dependent on you. And it's difficult because you have to work on it. Number two, because it doesn't depend on the external world, it's consistent and it's constant. It's stable. As long as you do the work, you're now in control of this. So it doesn't matter if your football team wins or loses, that's not going to affect your state of happiness because you're not relying on the external world for your state of happiness. If someone insults you, you're not going to get upset. And if someone praises you, you're not going to get arrogant because you're not relying on that. So in Hebrew, we actually say, mitzvah gedola liat b'simcha. B'simcha. But in Hebrew means in. You're in something, b'simcha, which means you're in a state of being. You're in a state of mind. It's a state of joy. Simcha in Judaism isn't a feeling that you get from things going your way, and then when they stop going your way, it goes down and it's up and down. It's you are in consistently and basically constantly, unless you get diagnosed with a terrible disease or someone dies, then it can dip a little bit. But if you have the right state of mind, you're always going to come up again. You're always going to reach. So I'm going to tell you the key to happiness in life, if I may. And I believe you're going to agree with me. I believe you're going to agree. We're jumping straight into this here. The key to happiness in life, and if you have this one thing, you will be happy. And if you don't have it, you won't be happy. And that is 2 words. And by the way, if you ask my children, what's the key to happiness in life? And they're 8 and 6 now, but they would have given you this answer since they were about 4 and 2. And if they didn't give the answer, I'd hit them until they did. I don't hit my children anymore because they say what I want them to say now. The key to simcha in life, you got to write this down. Write this down is, and nothing, only this and nothing else, alcohol. That is it. That's the only way you're ever going to have a consistent state. If you can just keep drinking and drinking and drinking as much as you can, castle lager, then you will experience true, deep, consistent, meaningful, authentic happiness. But if that can't work, the actual true key to happiness, I'm building it up here, but you're going to agree, is positive attitude. Ta-da! Da, 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 da. This is the key to happiness. We've just said it. This is our first class. I've now given you the most important thing you can ever have. This is a gift. I've given you the most important gift of your whole life, and that's the key to happiness. And the key to simcha is positive attitude. If you have a positive attitude to life and towards yourself and towards other people, you will be happy no matter what. It could be raining, it could be dark and cloudy, you could win, you could lose, you could get the bus, you could miss the bus. If you've got an positive attitude, you will be happy. If you don't, you don't. That's it. So it's all your attitude, it's your mind. So we've got to define what that means. I just want to sit with that for a second. Your happiness is based on your attitude. That's it. By the way, the word besimcha has the same letters as the Hebrew word machshava. Exactly the same letters, and machshava means thoughts. So if your thoughts are in the right place, if you have the right attitude, then you will be besimcha. And if they're not, you won't be. That's it. So let's define that. I was just going to stop for 1 minute. Does anyone immediately have any question or something on their mind they want to share very quickly? And you don't have to, like, I just want to put it out there in case. Or if anyone just wants to unmute and say, hallelujah, that's the best thing I've ever heard. Thank you so much. Hey, that's good. A laugh is good too. Anyone else want to express?
However, I've got a question.
Please.
I've heard Rav Gav say that to be happy, you're happy when you're doing what you think is right.
I'm not going to argue with Rav Gav, but if you're doing what you think is right, but you have a negative attitude, you won't be happy. I'm doing the right thing, but I'm really resentfully doing the right thing. I know it's the right thing to do. I got to give that money back. It's not my money, but I got to give it back. I can do that resentfully. So if you're doing the right thing and with the right attitude, then you will be happy. But I wouldn't say that that's the key, although I'm not going to argue with Rav Gav. He's much funnier than me.
Okay.
Rov,
Yeah.
can you define what a positive attitude is?
Thank you
Because
so much. That's exactly what I was going to do next.
okay, and I'll start.
That's
But
such a
it
good
sounds
point.
like it could almost be like a careless attitude. For
Excellent.
example, if you make the bus or miss the bus, or if things work out or don't work out, but then you could also just float around the world.
Yeah, perfect. So the reason I like that question so much is because you
That's fun.
need to think.
Thank
You can remute yourself, by the way. You're thinking how you're meant to think now, and the question always has to be, can you define what you're talking about? Great that you say a positive attitude. If you can't define positive attitude, that's not going to help you. So we're now going to define positive attitude, unless there's anyone else who wants to make a comment or a suggestion or donation. Okay. So we're going to move on to the next level, which is let's define positive attitude. Going back here. Can everyone remute themselves, or can Rav Ziskin mute everyone? I unmuted myself, if that's okay, because I thought it would be important that you could hear me. This is like when people come to me for Shabbos and they wash their hands for challah, so they can't talk, and I'm the only one who can talk. It's like, Okay. Also, I need a time check. I don't have a time piece here, and I could, oh, I do actually, sorry. I could talk forever now. So fine. So let's define positive attitude. I'm going to define it like this. Positive attitude means I focus on the good and I grow from the bad. I focus on the positive and I don't ignore the negative and I don't pretend that it's not there, but I use it as a means of growth. It doesn't mean I never feel pain, but it means I deal with my pain. So I'm going to say that one more time because we've got to get this in our heads. A positive attitude means I choose to focus on the good and make that significant, make those positive thoughts and finding the best in everything. I choose to make that voice in my head loud. And the negative voices in my head and the negative feelings and the negative action, the negativity, I don't ignore it, but I work with it in a healthy way to be able to process it and grow from it. Do we hear this definition? Focus on the good, grow from the bad. I'm focusing on the good. I'm not saying there is no bad. I'm going to have a positive attitude towards the bad. I'm going to focus on the good. So I gave the example of love. My wife has 1,000 good character traits and she's got 1.5 bad ones. So I choose to focus on the 1,000 good ones. But let's say you've got to be real. It doesn't mean that you've got a really horrible, nasty, mean friend and they always tease you and they always beat you up and they're always negative. So you have to focus only on what's good about them and be their friend. No, get out of there. Don't spend any time with them. That's the most healthy thing to do. But you can still love them by focusing on what's good about them, but be honest and say it's not healthy for me to be around them. So this is a healthy attitude towards life and difficulty. So this is what we need to be focusing on now. How do we amp up the positive thoughts and the positive emotions? And how do we learn to focus on what's good? Now, some people are very good at finding the good in the bad. So we ran these trips to Thailand. I stopped a couple of years ago. The trips are still going. H20s takes people on these trips as well. And the trips are amazing, and we do mindfulness work, and we do volunteer work, and we do Thai culture, and we do zip lining, and we help elephants, and it's an amazing trip. But in a third world country, in a developing country, things go wrong. So you can have someone on a trip, and everything's going wrong. Everything's going wrong. It's raining, and the volunteering didn't work out, and we don't have enough food, and we missed the bus. So we're sitting under some shelter in the rain, not enough food, no volunteering to do. There's always that one person in the group who says, okay, but we're in Thailand. That's usually me, by the way. But still, it's like, let's go and dance in the rain. And I've got videos of whole groups of our participants dancing in the rain. And at the end of the trip, everyone looks back and says, that was the highlight. What was the highlight of the trip for me? It was dancing in the rain. Now, some people have 20/20 hindsight and they say, yeah, that was the best. And it's like, no, you were really complaining at the time. Don't pretend that it was great then. So in a way, you have to have your hindsight in the moment. But you have there are people on the trips, everything's going right. The weather's perfect. The food's amazing. The volunteering's great. But there's a cockroach in their room. Oh, and now suddenly it's about how could you, I want an authentic experience of Thailand, just with no cockroaches. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's okay. So there are some people who naturally focus on what's good and deal with the bad. And there's some people who doesn't matter how good it is, they are going to focus on the bad. You can have a watermelon. Children do this a lot, actually. You give your child a peach, and it's a perfect peach, but there's one little brown bit on the peach, that's it. Take it away, it's like disease. I'm not dealing with that. Now, children don't understand that the brown bruised part of like bananas and peaches are actually sweeter. They're actually nicer, by the way. But that's, you zoom in with this one bad thing about myself. I've got it. I'm going to zoom in on my one bad. You're going to focus and zoom in powerfully on this one negative thing and miss the whole beauty all around. Or are you going to I'm going to zoom in and focus on that positive thing, and all the negative stuff around it, I'll deal with it. I'll deal with that. I'm not ignoring it, but I'm choosing to focus on the positive. So we now have to really understand, where do you get your attitude from? What creates your attitude to life? Now, there's something called nature and there's something called nurture. So nature means we each have powers in our soul. So I'm not going to go there fully, but there's a Kabbalistic idea that there are 4 elements. earth, wind, fire, and water. And each of our souls is made up with these foundations. So if you're a very fire person, you could be very angry and very arrogant. Or you could be very passionate and very inspirational. That's fire. If you're an earth person, you can be very grounded and very stable, or you can be very depressed and very lazy. So we have these forces within us, and you can use it in a different way. So you do have a nature. Some people are more prone to anger than other people. Then we have something called nurture. You have your upbringing, and it's really at home. Your parents, your upbringing creates your attitude to life in general. So if you had good, loving, wonderful parents, then in general you will have a better attitude to life. If you grew up in a loving home, that's really going to influence your attitude. And if you didn't, that's also going to influence your attitude. But at some point in your life, you have to say to yourself, I'm not going to let someone else or my external circumstances or anything that happened in my life define my attitude anymore. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to choose my attitude. I'll tell you a quick story. It's a very difficult story to hear in a way, but I think you're going to get it. I have a rabbi, his name is Rabbi Barry Klein, an amazing life coach, amazing rabbi. And he had a chebora. He had a group of guys learning together. And it was for people like me, who don't necessarily fit into the mainstream yeshiva system, and people who maybe grew up religious and then stopped being religious, but now are trying to be more. And it's just an amazing mix of great people. But sometimes you get people with a bad attitude in there, like their parents force them to go. So there's one kid joined the chebora, 21-year-old kid, very bad attitude, and just putting other people down and complaining and, sitting at the back with his hood over his head and being like, you don't understand me. So Barry Klein sits him down and says to him, what's up with your attitude, man? And he said, my father was very physically and emotionally abusive. I grew up for many years. I was afraid every time my father came home from work, I kind of hid. Like, he was physically and emotionally abusive. So Rabbi Barry Klein says to him, I am so deeply sorry to hear that. You don't deserve that. No one deserves that. You're a great kid. I see that, you're the victim here. I'm sorry you had to go through that. I'm going to be here for you. I'll support you. We'll work on you. I just want you to know that I see like the strengths in you. I see there's amazing, you got leadership abilities. And if we can just focus it, really invest it. And he goes, if you need therapy, I'll help you pay for therapy. If you need medication, whatever, I'm going to help you process. About 9 months later, this kid's once again terrible attitude and smoking weed and throwing bits of paper at people. Barry Klein sits him down and he says, my friend, like, what's up with your attitude? And the kid said to him, my father was very physically and emotionally abusive. Barry Klein said to him, no, that's what you said last time. That's what you said last time. Don't keep using that as an excuse. Don't keep being the victim. You're right. I'm not saying you're not right. It is your father's fault and he shouldn't have been so horrible. But at some point in your life, you have to take responsibility for your attitude. Don't be 90 years old, having abused your own children and having lived a miserable life and not achieved anything. And when you're 90, say, well, it's because my father was this, or because my boss was this, or because something happened. Don't do that. Even though you're justified, by the way, you're 100% right. You're justified. You are the victim. Don't play the victim. At some point, you got to choose your attitude shift. And that's not easy. No one's saying that's easy. And you do need therapy and medicate, whatever you need to do it. But at some point, you have to choose. I'm now choosing to not be a victim anymore. And I'm choosing to have a good attitude. I'm choosing to at least work on shifting my attitude. And I have another friend who was abused by his father, and now he's the best, most loving, sweet father in the world. Because he said, I don't want to be like my father. So stop blaming your external circumstances. A, stop relying on external circumstances for your happiness. And B, stop blaming your external circumstances for your attitude. So this is why all the work we're doing is internal and we've got to take responsibility for it ourselves. And that is, on one hand, challenging, but on another hand, extremely empowering, because you're not depending on anything or anyone but yourself and your tools and your mentors and your rabbis and your friends and your support group, and you're not alone in this journey. But this is the journey. I'm just going to summarize what we said. I think maybe we'll stop for tonight and have questions. Is that I can carry on? I can speak for another 3 hours if you want. But let's just summarize what we said before, and what we said first. If you want to achieve something in life, you have to have a very clear goal, and you have to define your goal. So we said our goal at the moment is simcha. So we define simcha as a state of consistent vitality and contentment based on having a positive attitude. We didn't say that, I just said it now, and that's quite good. I like that. But that's basically a summary of the whole class. What is simcha in Judaism? It's a state of being. It doesn't depend on anything. It doesn't depend on the external world. I am in a state of feeling vitality and contentment and positivity in my life. Why? Because I'm focusing on the good and I'm growing from the back. That is what simcha. So that is the goal. And the steps to achieving the goal is developing a positive attitude. And then you need to have steps towards developing a positive attitude and define many areas of positive attitude you can work on. In the next class, I'm going to be sharing with you, I've identified 6 positive attitude shifts that you can have. So we're going to be working on that positive attitude shifts we can have. But for this week, we're just going to be working on the idea that my happiness is in my control. And what I think is happiness, i.e. the feeling I get when my friends visit, or when I watch Netflix, or when my team wins, or when I do well, or when people like my Facebook post, or when that isn't actually simcha. It's nice, it's very cute, but stop chasing those things to feel happy. What you need to be doing is just understand the idea. You need to be developing a positive attitude to be happy. So that's really what we're working on implementing in it's a shift of perspective now. I am now very clear of what the goal is. I'm clear of the steps, and I'm willing to put in the work to do the steps to arrive at the goal. And I understand what the goal is, and I understand what the steps is, and I'm committing myself to go on this journey. So that's where we're holding at the moment. Next time we're going to start talking, being more identifying what these positive attitude shifts are going to be. Are there any questions at this point? I love it when it's just so deeply clear that you just don't have questions. You're just very excited. I'm so excited. Let me see. Chat. Anyone? I wish I could see you guys. Can we do the next round live in Jerusalem? In quarantine?
I'll give a little shout out. I asked the question after you said I'm going to define what this is about, and I asked that question. So I apologize for that. But it's really interesting what you've been talking about. I just wanted to know, with regards to we've been in quarantine now for nearly 9 weeks, and it's great to have this positive outlook on yourself, and with regards to having other people around you that are also in this tight environment, and now they're kind of influencing your positive space. I'm assuming that this is a full series program, so we'll learn a lot along the way. But is there any little pointers you can give till next week that we can try?
We're going to be speaking about this. Sorry, we're going to be speaking about a lot next time. But once you're in a very positive state, then other people can't influence your positive state. And by the way, that's a very high level, and you're not going to shift there in a week. But I'm just saying, at some point, you have such high consciousness and positive attitude, and what that means is, I'm not going to let your negativity get me down. I'm going to be there for you. I'll be there for you and I'll support you, but I'm not going to get miserable just because you're moaning and complaining. I'm not giving you the power to choose how I feel, because I'm so in control of how I feel that it doesn't matter how negative and difficult you're being. I'm not going to let that affect me. And so next week we'll really work on how do we get such a strong sense of self that we don't let other people's affect us.
Awesome. Thank you. Looking forward to next week.
Be'ezrat Hashem, me too. If anyone has any questions in between, maybe Rav Ziskin can post my email address, which is dbcohen@aish.com, and hit me up with your questions. I also want you to know it's a long journey. We've just defined this, and I want you to have lots and lots of self-compassion. You're not going to be able to flip into positive attitude consistently all the time. I'm giving you the tools, and I'm going to help you process the tools. But even after 4 weeks, you're not going to be. Hopefully, you'll have a major shift. We're retraining your mind. We're changing your whole soundtrack in your mind. And so, if you got 4 weeks against 27 years, give yourself a break. Just any little breakthrough is a very important, very special thing. That one time you notice you're being negative and you shift to positive, that's amazing. And you should focus on that, by the way. Some people will be like, yeah, but it was only one time that I've managed to focus on the positive, but 10 times I focused on the negative. And I'm like, you're just focusing on the negatives again. Focus on the one positive time, and then they got another tick for focusing on the positive. So we're going to be doing that. This whole journey is one of joy. It's one of not beating yourself up for not doing the work. It's all an adventurous journey into finding sweetness and peace of mind and goodness in life. And it takes time and it takes self-compassion. So that's the game.
Maybe a question that some people might be thinking, just for clarification, the notion that the happiness should not be rooted in anything external. And it's obvious, if it is rooted in external things, then it's dependent on external things, and my happiness is not in my control. But at the same time, you're saying, but you should focus on the positive. So what if the positive is not external things, then obviously it's something other than external things.
The positive is your attitude to the external things. The external things can be whatever they are, but your positive attitude is how you can't choose the external thing, but you can choose how you relate to it. So positive attitude means I'm relating to whatever's happening. It doesn't mean cut yourself off from the external world at all. In fact, it means you're more deeply committed to the external world because you're not dependent on it, you're not reliant on it. So you can really, it's not you're going to be emotionally detached. You're going to actually be more emotionally available for people because you're not relying on them to be anyway. So positive attitude is how I relate to the external world. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that Harvard study that was done that found out that true happiness comes from actually the relationships you build with people and your family and friends? I'm not sure if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. It says that we're talking Torah now. So there's something called modern psychology, which is very important and great, maybe. But that's still saying that someone who doesn't have good relationships can't be happy. So I think having good relationships with your colleagues and your friends is definitely a factor towards you feeling good about life. But that's not called simcha. It's a very good thing, by the way. Your football team should win, and you should have a nice trip. And I'm not saying those things are bad. I'm just saying there's a much deeper thing called simcha, which anyone can tap into, even if they don't have any of the factors that modern psychology wants to say would add to your joy. That's why I don't want to use the word joy or happiness, really. I want to use the word simcha because it's a much deeper idea. My sister went to Oxford and Harvard. I went to Manchester and Ish. Which is good. So yeah, I would challenge that Harvard study just by redefining what happiness is. I think they're right. It's if you hate your job but you have good colleagues, I think it's the same report you're talking about. You hate your job but you have great colleagues, you're going to be much happier there than if you love your job but you got bad colleagues. That was the famous study they did. So, yes. So I want to work on a state of joy which is not dependent on having good colleagues or anything, nothing, completely independent of anything that anyone can tap into. You can tell there's Harvard people that Rabbi Dov Ber Cohen from Jerusalem says so. It's not me, it's the Torah's teaching this. If it, I could get very arrogant about this and say I'm right, but I'm not even saying what, I'm just saying what Judaism teaches us. And if you got Judaism against Tony Robbins, I'm going with Judaism. Some people say, oh, what you're teaching is CBT or NLP or blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, this is Torah, which was 3,000 years before modern psychology. So if modern psychology is in line with it, then Mazel Tov, they got there. But there are some times when modern psychology is very at odds with Torah understanding. We'll talk about a very big example of this next week, about your shadow side, your dark side. Dark side. So we're gonna get all of this. By the way, get questions, because if you're not asking questions, or at least having questions, then and you're not really interacting and you're involved, you'll only get so much out of it. So I want to encourage you to, if you have any questions, you can email me, and if you've got any difficult questions, you can email Rabbi Ziskin. Yofi.
Okay, great. Listen, thank you very much. It's a great start. And well done for everybody for coming. If you would like Rabbi Cohen's email address, maybe it's easier, just let me know, and I'll be happy to send it your way. Not everybody who's on tonight I recognize, so it's amazing. Welcome, new people. Just maybe identify yourself with me at some point, through perhaps who your connection was, and I'll be in touch with you as well. So next week, same time, same channel, 8 o'clock next Tuesday night for part 2 of this great webinar. Thank you, Rabbi Cohen, very, very much. Welcome,
Very
everybody.
big pleasure.
Very good.